She was crying in a cage at the train station, so I paid for her freedom with my last dollar. The dust from the approaching train hadn't even settled when I heard her crying. It was a sound that cut through the usual cacophony of Bitter Creek Station like a knife through leather, soft, desperate, and utterly heartbreaking. I'd been waiting on that platform for 3 hours, my last dollar coin growing warm in my pocket as I clutched it like a talisman, hoping the westbound would carry me away from the mess I'd made of my life. But that crying changed everything. I pushed through the crowd of passengers and porters, following the sound past the ticket office and around to the freight platform. That's where I saw her. A young woman, maybe 20 years old, sitting behind iron bars in what looked like a modified livestock car. Her dark hair hung in tangled curtains around her face, and her dress, once probably fine calico, was torn and stained with travel dust. "What in Sam Hill?" I muttered, approaching the cage. "You best move along, mister," came a gravelly voice behind me. I turned to see a man in a sheriff's badge, his hand resting casual-like on his gun belt. "Ain't nothing here concerns you." "That's a human being in there, Sheriff," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What's she done?" The sheriff spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt. "Name's Marshall Pike, and that there's Rosalind Fairfax. She's property of the Blackwood Mining Company, signed and sealed. Got herself into debt gambling, she did, and now she's bound for their operation up in Silver Ridge to work it off." I felt my blood run cold. I'd heard stories about the Blackwood operation. Men and women worked to death in conditions that would shame the devil himself. Nobody came back from Silver Ridge with their soul intact, if they came back at all. "How much?" I asked. "What's that? How much is her debt?" Marshall Pike laughed, showing teeth stained brown with tobacco. $1 if you can believe it. Girl's got terrible luck at cards." He laughed again. "Course, with interest and transport fees, Blackwood's got her marked down for about 5 years of labor. She'll be lucky to see 30. My hand found the dollar coin in my pocket. My last dollar, the difference between eating tonight and going hungry, between having train fare and walking the next 100 miles to nowhere in particular. I'd been saving it for something important, though I couldn't rightly say what. Now I knew. "I'll pay her debt," I said. The marshal's eyebrows shot up. "You what now?" I said. "I'll pay it." $1, right? That's the original debt." "Well, yes, but then here's your dollar." I pulled the coin from my pocket and flipped it to him. It caught the afternoon sunlight as it spun through the air, winking like a star before landing in his palm with a solid thunk. Marshall Pike stared at the coin, then at me, then back at the coin. "Son, you just bought yourself a heap of trouble. Blackwood ain't gonna be pleased about this, and they got long arms and longer memories." "Let me worry about Blackwood," I said. "Now unlock that cage." The marshal shrugged and pulled out a ring of keys. "Your funeral, son, but the law's the law, and debt paid is debt paid." He worked the lock and the cage door swung open with a rusty squeal. The young woman looked up at me with eyes the color of river stones, wide with disbelief. You paid for me?" "Yes, miss. You're free now." She stepped out of the cage on unsteady legs, and I caught her elbow when she swayed. Up close I could see she was even prettier than I'd first thought, with high cheekbones and a straight nose that suggested good breeding. But it was her eyes that held me, intelligent, proud, and grateful all at once. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would you do such a thing for a stranger?" "Name's Jesse Callahan," I said, tipping my hat. "And I reckon nobody deserves to be caged like an animal, no matter what they've done." "Rosalind Fairfax," she replied with a small curtsy that was oddly dignified given her circumstances. "And I am very much in your debt, Mr. Callahan." "No, miss, you're not. That's the whole point." Marshall Pike pocketed my dollar and walked away, shaking his head and muttering about fools and their money. The westbound train was boarding now, steam hissing from its engine like an impatient dragon, but I found I wasn't so eager to leave anymore. "What will you do now?" I asked Rosalind. She looked around the platform, taking in the rough men and weathered buildings of Bitter Creek with a lost expression. "I hadn't thought that far ahead. I suppose I should wire my family back east, though I'm not sure they'll want to hear from me after—" She trailed off, color rising in her cheeks. "After what?" "After I lost our family's land deed in a poker game," she finished quietly. "I thought I could win enough to save our farm from the bank. Instead, I lost everything and found myself bound for a mining camp. My father will never forgive me. The train whistle blew, long and mournful. Last call for passengers. Miss Fairfax, I said, making a decision that probably wasn't the smartest I'd ever made. I was heading west to start over somewhere new, maybe find work on a ranch, or try my hand at prospecting. If you've got nowhere else to go. She looked at me for a long moment, studying my face like she was trying to read my character written there. Mr. Callahan, you've already done far more for me than anyone has a right to expect. I couldn't possibly impose further. It wouldn't be an imposition, and I've got to tell you true, I spent my last dollar on your freedom, so I'm not boarding that train anyway. Figured I'd walk west, find work where I could. You spent your last dollar on me? Her eyes went wide. But that means you're stranded here too. I shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Still does. The train was pulling out now, black smoke billowing into the evening sky. A few late passengers ran alongside, trying to catch the last car, but it was too late. Bitter Creek Station settled into its usual quiet as the locomotive's rumble faded into the distance. Well, Rosalind said, brushing dust from her skirt, it seems we're both in need of a plan. I reckon we are at that. She looked around the platform once more, then back at me with something like determination sparking in her riverstone eyes. Mr. Callahan, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. You said you were thinking of trying your hand at prospecting. It so happens that the land deed I lost in that poker game, it was for property in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, about a week's ride north of here. My grandfather always claimed there was gold in them hills, but nobody ever took him seriously. And you're thinking, I'm thinking that debt I owed, it was to a man named Santiago Reyes. He runs the poker games here in Bitter Creek, and he's got a reputation for being honorable in his way. If we could somehow win back that deed. Miss Fairfax, I appreciate what you're suggesting, but I've got exactly $0 to my name now, and gambling is what got you into this mess in the first place. She smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from her, and it transformed her whole face. Who said anything about gambling, Mr. Callahan? Santiago Reyes may be honorable, but he's also a businessman, and I have something he wants more than money. What's that? Information. You see, I wasn't just some foolish girl trying her luck at cards. I was in that poker game because I was listening, and I heard things about the Blackwood Mining Company's plans, about government contracts and railroad deals that Santiago's been trying to get wind of for months. Now that was interesting. You were spying, in a manner of speaking. My father may be a simple farmer, but my late mother was. She taught me that information is often more valuable than gold if you know how to use it. I found myself grinning despite our situation. Miss Fairfax, I'm beginning to think there's more to you than meets the eye. There usually is, Mr. Callahan. The question is, are you willing to partner with a woman who might be more trouble than she's worth? I thought about it for all of 2 seconds. I'd spent the last year drifting from town to town, doing odd jobs and trying to outrun a past that seemed determined to catch up with me. Maybe it was time to stop running and start building something new. And maybe, just maybe, this remarkable woman was exactly the kind of trouble I needed in my life. Miss Fairfax, I think we might just make a good team. We shook hands right there on the platform, her small fingers surprisingly strong in mine. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and for the first time in months I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. So I said, where do we find this Santiago Reyes? The Silver Dollar Saloon, she replied. But first we need to get cleaned up and make ourselves presentable. Can't very well negotiate from a position of strength looking like a couple of saddle tramps. With what money? Her smile turned mischievous. Mr. Callahan, when you've grown up poor on a failing farm, you learn to be resourceful. Follow me. She led me off the platform and into the maze of buildings that made up Bitter Creek's main street. The town was the kind of place that had sprung up around the railroad like a flower around water, rough, temporary looking, but bustling with activity. Cowboys, miners, farmers and railroad workers moved in and out of saloons, general stores and boarding houses, all of them looking like they had somewhere important to be. Rosalind walked with purpose, her head high despite her bedraggled appearance. She stopped in front of a small building with a painted sign reading, Mrs. Chen's Laundry and Baths. "Wait here," she said, and disappeared inside. I waited, watching the street and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. A few minutes later, she emerged with an elderly Chinese woman who looked me up and down with sharp, evaluating eyes. "This is Mrs. Chen," Rosalind said. "I've explained our situation, and she's agreed to help. Mrs. Chen nodded once. You clean up, look respectable. I have clothes from customers who never come back. You pay when you can, yes? Yes, ma'am, I said, grateful for the kindness of strangers. Much obliged. An hour later, I hardly recognized myself in Mrs. Chen's cracked mirror. The borrowed clothes fit well enough, black trousers, white shirt and a dark vest that made me look almost respectable. My hair was washed and combed, my face shaved clean, and I felt human again for the first time in weeks. When Rosalind emerged from the women's bath area, I nearly swallowed my tongue. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was pinned up in a style that emphasized the graceful line of her neck. She looked like a lady, which I supposed she was. "Will I do?" she asked, smoothing the skirt of her dress. "You'll do just fine," I managed. Mrs. Chen smiled approvingly. "Much better. Now you look like people with good fortune coming." We thanked her profusely and promised to settle our debt as soon as we could. Then, as the evening shadows lengthened, we made our way to the Silver Dollar Saloon. The place was exactly what you'd expect from a frontier drinking establishment. Sawdust on the floor, a long bar made from rough-hewn planks, and tables scattered around where men played cards, drank whiskey, and told lies about their accomplishments. The air was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of unwashed bodies, but underneath it all was something else, the electric tension that comes when money changes hands and fortunes are made or lost on the turn of a card. "There," Rosalind whispered, nodding toward a corner table where a well-dressed Mexican man sat alone, shuffling a deck of cards with practiced ease. Santiago Reyes. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with silver threads in his black hair and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. His clothes were expensive, tailored suit, silk vest, gold watch chain, but he wore them casually, like a man comfortable in his own skin. "Let me do the talking," Rosalind said. We approached his table and Santiago looked up with a slight smile. "Ah, Señorita Fairfax, I heard you had some difficulty today. Something about a cage?" His English was perfect, with just a trace of accent. "Mr. Reyes," Rosalind said smoothly, taking a seat without being invited, "I'd like to discuss a business proposition." Santiago's eyebrows rose. "Business? I thought we concluded our business yesterday evening when you signed that pretty little paper. That's exactly what I want to discuss. You see, I believe I have something you want more than my family's land deed, and what might that be?" Rosalind leaned forward, lowering her voice. 3 days ago, I was in the Blackwood Company office in Denver. They think I'm just a simple farm girl, so they spoke freely in front of me. Would you like to know about their plans for the silver mines in the San Juan Mountains? Or perhaps their arrangement with the Union Pacific regarding freight rates for ore shipment? Santiago's casual expression sharpened. "Go on." "Not here," Rosalind said, glancing around the crowded saloon. "Too many ears, but I'm willing to trade information for that deed." Santiago studied her for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to me. "And you are?" "Jesse Callahan," I said. "Miss Fairfax's partner." "Ah, the gentleman who purchased her freedom today. Very gallant." He smiled, but there was calculation behind it. "Tell me, Senor Callahan, what makes you think this information is worth a land deed?" "Because," I said, remembering something Rosalind had mentioned, "you've been trying to position yourself to bid on some government mining contracts, and the Blackwood Company has been undercutting you at every turn. Information about their operations might level the playing field." Santiago's smile widened into genuine amusement. "Very good. You two make an interesting pair." He stood up, pocketing his cards. "Very well. Let us continue this conversation somewhere more private. I have rooms above the saloon." His private office was a different world from the rough saloon below. Fine carpets covered the floor, books lined the walls, and oil paintings in heavy frames depicted scenes of Mexico that spoke of wealth and culture. Santiago poured 3 glasses of what looked like expensive brandy and gestured for us to sit. "Now then," he said, settling behind an ornate desk, "what exactly did you hear in Denver?" For the next hour, Rosalind laid out everything she'd overheard: shipping schedules, ore quality reports, plans for expansion, and most importantly, Blackwood's strategy for monopolizing silver mining in Colorado territory. Santiago listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions that showed he understood the implications of what she was telling him. When she finished, Santiago leaned back in his chair and studied us both. "This is valuable information," he admitted. "More valuable than I expected. But a land deed is permanent. Information is only useful until it becomes common knowledge." "True," Rosalind said, "but this particular information could save you months of investigation and position you to make some very profitable decisions.
How much is that worth to you? Santiago smiled and pulled a document from his desk drawer. The land deed, I realized. Señorita Fairfax, you drive a hard bargain, but I am a gambling man, and sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards. He pushed the deed across the desk. Consider your debt paid in full. Rosalind's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the deed and examined it. It's all here, she said softly. The full parcel, exactly as it was. What about supplies? I asked. If we're heading up into the mountains to prospect, we'll need equipment, provisions, horses. Santiago chuckled. Ah, Señor Callahan, you think like a practical man. I respect that. He opened another drawer and pulled out a leather pouch that clinked with the sound of coins. Consider this a bonus payment for information well delivered. It should be enough to outfit yourselves properly. I felt a grin spreading across my face. Mr. Reyes, you're a gentleman and a scholar. I am a businessman who recognizes opportunity, he corrected, and I suspect this will not be the last time our paths cross. The territory is changing, growing. There will be other opportunities for those wise enough to recognize them. We shook hands all around, and Santiago had one of his men escort us to the best hotel in town, which wasn't saying much in Bitter Creek, but it was clean and comfortable. As we parted in the hallway between our rooms, Rosalind turned to me with that devastating smile. Mr. Callahan, I believe our partnership is off to an excellent start. Miss Fairfax, I believe you're right. 3 days later, we rode out of Bitter Creek with a pack mule loaded with supplies, and the morning sun at our backs. I'd bought a decent horse from the local livery, a steady bay gelding named Buck, while Rosalind had chosen a spirited chestnut mare she called Sunrise. We made quite a picture, I imagined. The reformed gambler, and the mysterious lady heading into the mountains with dreams of gold. But as we climbed higher into the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, following old mining roads and deer trails toward Rosalind's grandfather's claim, I realized that gold was only part of what we were seeking. Somewhere along the way, between that cage at the train station and this moment, we'd found something more valuable than any precious metal. We'd found each other. The cry that had drawn me to that platform seemed like a lifetime ago now, though it had only been a week. Sometimes the best decisions we make are the ones that seem foolish at the time, spending your last dollar on a stranger's freedom, trusting someone you've just met, or heading into unknown territory with nothing but hope and determination. But as I watched Rosalind guide her horse up the mountain trail, her back straight and her face turned toward whatever adventures lay ahead, I knew I'd made the right choice. That last dollar had bought more than her freedom. It had bought us both a chance at a new beginning. And in the wild, beautiful country of the Colorado Territory, sometimes that's all you need.